Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Spar&Brawl. I hope you're having a decent day. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Sam, and we're gonna launch and try out a new show today called Propaganda Review, where we're basically gonna look at news stories from around the world. But it was mainly Sam's idea, and he's done all the heavy lifting for today's show. So, Sam, why don't you explain a little bit better what you have in mind with this show?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. But yeah, it was a idea we came up through our discussions, and we are going to look at large news outlets, mostly publicly funded, and break down what the major stories that they're talking about. So basically, we're going to focus on major news outlets like BBC that are publicly funded, or RT, or news outlets like CNN or Fox News that are funded heavily by large organizations. So not specifically just publicly funded or state media, but that type of news show, because these news outlets kind of set the tone of the discussion uh, in their respective market or region. So we thought that might be a good idea. We try to limit our own analysis and input in these stories, mostly focusing on what they covered, and we're not really diving deep into them for deep dives. We're going to keep those for the briefs and all that. But yeah, so that's the whole idea behind this show, which is propaganda review in the same sense that is literature review, sort of review of what's been going on in terms of PR and international news. So yeah, that's the whole idea. And for today's program, we have it's a because it was the first one, we thought we'd try different things. So we first discussed the major issues that are common to all different regions or markets that these news outlets operate in. Then we're going to focus on each region or again market and go through them, starting with the US and then probably moving to Pacific and then working our way back anti-clockwise all around the world today. So I think, I don't know, anything else I should add, do you think?
No, that sounds about right. So let's get going.
Sure. Yeah, so as I mentioned, today we're going to start with the US. We have also stories from Pacific region, East Asia, China region. We have stories from the Commonwealth, UK, Canada, some stories from news outlets from European countries, and some news outlets from Iran, India, and the Arab world. So different countries from Arabic countries. Yeah. All right. So now let's start with our first major region market, US, to be honest, US. And oh, by the way, in our US section, we also look at some Israeli publications because kind of didn't know, kind of could have put Israel in the Middle East section, but we are not doing a really Middle East section. We are doing like different countries. So we thought maybe for this one, it's more appropriate to put it next to the US because the issues are kind of similar. So as you can see, CNN focus on Corona, focus on Taliban, and a lot of stuff on China. There was quite an interesting article on the ongoing issue with Taliban, and Taliban religious police instructed to be more moderate, but vulnerable Afghans say brutal justice is still being meted out. The article, the headline, I think, is somewhat it clearly betrays a bias, but if you do read the article, it's not that bad. For example, I want to highlight this: under the previous government, corruption was rampant and crime rates were high. Since outsetting the US-backed administration and storming to power in August, the Taliban have gained favor with many for meting out swift, albeit brutal justice under the group's interpretation of Sharia law. So it's not, I didn't find the article to be that much biased or anything. It's reporting, it's selective reporting, you could say, but then again, what reporting is it? Also, you had, sorry about that. I thought I got rid of all these things. You also had a lot of stuff about China in CNN, mostly mostly negative, to be honest, and mostly saying that China is raising tensions with Taiwan. Although, again, headlines were far harsher than the articles itself. If you read the articles itself, it was much more than reporting. And hopefully, if this episode is received well, and if we do more, maybe we do more deep dives on opinion parts of the outlets, but for the first one we thought we focus on the news segments. But in general, I would say I found it surprising that American website news outlets, at least because mostly I follow their YouTube or that type of thing, are far more international. For example, focusing on China, focusing on India, focusing on Afghanistan, far more than their videos on their YouTube channels do. And that was quite interesting. But at the same time, I found them to be somewhat less substantive. They had less experts and more just news stuff and more opinion and stuff. Especially, again, I don't want to, like, Democrats and Republicans are both bad, but Fox News, moving on from CNN, Fox News website and content and headline, it's just, I felt genuinely slightly stupider than when I started doing the research. I mean, mostly yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I mean, about CNN, I was gonna say that sometimes their press, for everyone, their press is sometimes better because they write so many articles, so some of the articles are better. And Fox, sometimes they have some decent articles, but they wouldn't make it to their front page. So yeah. Reading the front page must be brutal. Because they publish so many things on their websites, right? So yeah, some things are good, like some things are just okay reporting, because it is not
most of it is SEO. Yeah,
but yeah, I mean their front page and homepage. Yeah,
I mean, as you can clearly see. But, and by the way, I mean, I wanted to save this till the end, but I just mentioned it right now. These websites, American websites, American news outlets websites, had the worst UI and UX by far, user experience and user interface, and the just color, it's so tacky, and Jesus Christ, like constant reloading, advertisement popping out. Jesus, it must be so. It's kind of like American radio. Like whenever I listen to it online, with the constant advertisement by the government that you should get to that, you should do, I don't know, there's this cancer, there's that cancer, there's this. Anyway, you just want to kill yourself. But yeah, most Fox News, it was difficult to find anything of substance. It was a lot of focus on this story about a young lady that apparently got murdered. The van life people, I don't know about the story, but a lot of and I had moments from earlier, but I didn't screenshot them because I didn't know Fox News constantly reloads and updates its website. So it's been going on for the last 2 days. It's been their thing. Some stuff, a lot of Tucker Carlson. I must say they really focus on Tucker. They must know that Tucker Carlson is their sort of cash cow. So he comes
He's
up.
Their star player at the moment.
He comes up. Yeah, a lot of things about him, but the thing is, very the titles and the articles are both very biased. Like you could say, at least CNN articles are slightly better than their headlines, but no, it's just Fox News. It's just so
But I'm surprised that you say that CNN
for
TV
example,
is better. Sorry. I'm surprised you say that CNN TV is better than CNN website. I find the website to be much better than the TV. The TV, you get nothing out of it. Oh, I thought you said the other way around.
No, I said the website is much better than their videos on YouTube. I don't watch their TVs.
I mean, the TV is the worst, I would say.
I've never, no, like I watch it on YouTube segments. I mean, like I can't recall the last time
No, if you watch the whole, if you watch the whole thing, it's just the same topping with different cast members.
Yes, and it's just on constant repeat. I mean, my father sometimes watches them. I get a glimpse, but got that. But I just wanted to point out, I'm not a fan of Kamala Harris, but this article, Kamala Harris is a space video produced by Sinking Ship. sinking ship entertainment, uh, which she has been criticized for, and because the video had the criticism uh anyways, it's just it's so biased. The article is so one-sided. I mean, I'm not a fan of Kamala Harris. At least I think she's a Obama clone at best.
Well, at best,
But
yeah,
and
not even.
they were friends and they went to same uni.
I know,
I
but I'm
think they're
saying
very similar.
skill-wise, but yeah.
I think if she was at she's got people got a bit wised up to Obama's
Mhm.
skills in 2008. I don't know, maybe because I was to an extent fooled by Obama, so maybe. But I think now people are just more savvy, so it's harder to get away with just being, a slightly
Yeah.
ethnic. Anyways, or this one, it was quite interesting that I wanted to highlight this right now. One of the biggest issues in the US right now is the issue of the budget and the debt ceiling and all that. And hopefully we discussed it more in our progressive order, our podcast in a deeper thing. I think it's all, to be honest, the debt ceiling is a bullshit concept and all that. And two people, Christian Cinema and Joe Manchin, have been the people who are nominally at least blocking the passage of the two bills together, and
Yeah.
basically holding the flank for the right. They're basically stand-ins for 20 members of Congress. So, I don't think even, I don't know. But anyway, so that issue, interestingly, Fox News has been not kind of not surprisingly, Fox News has been taking Christian Cinema's side. And as you can read, ABC News says Christian Cinema has taken a hard turn to the right for resisting them
Yeah.
spending a spree, and then they go on to defend her, saying that the numbers and the math supports her position, which is she hasn't taken a position. She's just I think she's just ran away from what I understand and gone to exercise for a marathon or something.
Yeah.
So
The ladies on
yeah,
the ladies on the View explain it pretty well. What's going on?
Yes, the View did a great job. Actually, I wanted to mention that at the end because the View doesn't have a website, but yeah, the View, but could be. I think the View could be considered similar to Morning Joe, so sort of in a way they are a news program. But they did a great job, and there's that lady who was also on the Hill, Alisa Farah or somebody. Again,
Oh yeah, oh my God, that was her. But she was better there. She was better on the View. Oh, because
she
I remember.
She was taking the most idiotic position.
You're so
But,
right.
And
no,
Whoopi
but it was
Goldberg,
more
who, as an
idiotic.
actor, I love. Oh yes, her other thing was just the assassination thing was just crazy. The AI,
yeah, with Ryan
that's the
Grimm,
main issue.
Yeah.
The AI, yeah, that was check that out. That was the most. Yeah, that was completely stupid. But I would say that here it's just again, she was in a minority. But Whoopi Goldberg, who usually I don't agree, I love her as an actor, but politically is not, in my opinion, the most savvy person. But yeah, she and I believe Joy Behar, I don't know what the name of the main host, but they took great positions, I think. And so I think that was pretty much our sort of main news. Oh, sorry. You see, by the way, this is exactly, if you look at my screen right now, Haaretz is reloading right there. And that's the problem I only had with American and Jerusalem Post and Haaretz. It's just so goddamn. Anyways, last
we'll
2
have
days
to
have been
switch
difficult.
it up. No, we'll have to switch it up for these outlets for next time.
Yeah, I'm gonna just take screenshots and PDFs and shit. This is just not gonna. Anyway, but any comments specifically on the American stuff before I add some other thing? No. Sorry, I just wanted to. So yeah, in the US, I pointed out the major stories. But yeah, it was interesting to me to see that CNN didn't seem half as biased as Fox, even though usually I think we correctly point out that CNN is Clinton News Network, or they are supportive of mainstream democratic establishment, at least in their presentation, they were far better um, uh, than Fox News. And by the way, hopefully we'll add more, let's say, smaller but more maybe substantive publication. But we thought we start with the major ones and work our way to smaller ones. So let's move on to Israel. With the Jerusalem Post's main page has changed. So it's kind of But Jerusalem Post, I looked at the Jerusalem Post that I knew, and Haaretz, from what I know, is a bit more left wing. And sorry, I'm just looking at my notes.
Yeah, I received the Haaretz newsletter twice per day, I think. I mean, the articles are pretty good.
Are you? Do you? Did you have to pay for that? Because
no, I mean, I can't open most of the articles, okay. But I just read the headline and the first 2 paragraphs usually. And anything on COVID you can read. And as everybody knows, Israel is, an interesting topic when it comes to COVID, regardless of which side or angle you come from. Yeah, of course. You haven't heard all the different Israel arguments. Anyway, we won't take part in them on this channel because we don't want YouTube to come after us. Yeah, and that too.
Oh, okay.
No, and that as well. I mean, you get bored of it. Every now and then I'm into it, but then I completely forget about it for like weeks. Thankfully,
I know
it's all around us and so many other things to discuss.
Yeah, thankfully we are lucky to be shielded from some of its worst, I think.
Oh, that's for sure.
Yeah. Anyways, focusing on Israel. Yeah, I wanted to point out that Jerusalem Post was. I mean, this is a trend I think you can see in a lot of countries, and maybe we come back to it. But Jerusalem Post that is a bit more right-wing is a bit more internationally focused, I found. Haaretz was a bit more locally focused, and Jerusalem Post was a bit more, obviously, more reporting, while Haaretz had a lot more about like studies and criticisms of specific things or policies going on within Israel, very locally. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I did that because I think there's an extra lag today because of the whole thing. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because Haaretz is kind of left-wing, but I think within Israel. And so I think that's what focuses more on domestic things. Whereas if it's going to talk about more like if it's going to adopt a more leftist perspective internationally, then it could perhaps clash with some of other Israel's like worldviews, maybe. I don't know. I'm just guessing right now on live.
Yeah, no. I'm only adding a caveat because my Haaretz was brought to my attention through Katie Halper's show, which she brought the father of the Haaretz editor is a very, very famous academic who I've seen some videos of, but the name escapes my mind. So so he described it as quite left wing, but I can't read their articles because I can't pay for them. So yeah. So I was gonna get to that. But Haaretz, I basically had to go based on headlines and the first paragraph. So don't expect much there. But I just wanted to. Yeah, sorry, you wanted to add something?
No. I was gonna say I had the free subscription for I think 2 weeks. So if you want to give it a try, if ever, yeah.
Oh, I hate that. That's like being. I hate when like you're guesting somebody's gentleman. You know what I'm guesting somebody's special club for a week, and it's like I'd rather not experience that and just remain deprived and unknown. But yeah, for just to illustrate my point about international and more right-wing, Jerusalem Post, for example, focused on Israel's toughest stance on Iran, tough rhetoric stance.
Yeah,
their policy-wise are far more, far less aggressive as Netanyahu. They had an article obviously covering the last trip of the German's Chancellor Angela Merkel's her last trip, which was to Israel, and she asked the Iranians to return to the negotiation tables and they cover that, and they cover the interesting article. I found that to be that article shows that really betrays their bias, I think. Ben and Jerry, who
Oh
they make
yeah.
famous ice creams in US, and I quite like. Ben and Jerry suffered an AOC moment comment. When asked why they sell ice cream in Georgia and Texas, Ben and Jerry could not answer. AOC did the same a few years ago. This is reference to the BDS movement and the fact that they started not selling not selling ice creams, I believe, in the occupied territories, not in Israel, because I think that is something I'm personally against as well. But occupied territories, I do think they occupied territories differ from Georgia and Texas, from what I understand. Georgia and Texas are not internationally illegal occupied lands,
Yeah.
but yeah. But
No,
so
Israel propaganda, they're the best at like the
I mean, you could
whatabouts. Like anything, they'll find another one and be like, okay,
no,
what
but
about this? They
I
never
don't know.
claim that no, you shouldn't. They're like they've given up on that. They just say, what about this one? Like, what about that one? What about here? Why don't you do the same?
I think, to be honest, if you read the article, they would have had a better, like, they would have, it would have been better off if they've gone with California and would have pressed the issue of like, what about Mexico? Why isn't Mexico claiming California? It's
True
occupied
that.
territory. So, Texas and Georgia, I don't know. But that was
But man, I can't
interesting to.
believe they're still like they're obsessed with this Ben and Jerry thing in the Israeli press. I mean, it's always in
Are
it.
they? Oh,
I
I
remember
haven't. I
this
really
happened like a
didn't look.
few weeks or a few months ago.
I don't read this type of stuff that much. So
Yeah.
I agree. I know during Ben and Bernie Sanders campaign, I think when they did endorse him or something, there was a lot of criticism, and yeah. So yeah. I mean, yeah, it's very important, as you know,
Mhm.
ice cream industry, very powerful lobby. Uh, yeah. So again, uploading, upgrading. So as I mentioned, for example, Haaretz is more domestically focused. A lot of stuff about that. Apparently there is a lot of sexual scandals within the Israeli government going on. So they had a lot of articles about that, in the military, in the secret services, and all that. So a lot of stuff about COVID, more so than Jerusalem Post for sure. A lot of more stuff about, as you said, like a more conciliatory tone in the headlines in terms of Israel and US coming together, that
Mhm.
thing, for example.
No, I think they
Oh, sorry, I
definitely
don't know if
represent
yeah.
the left in Israel. I'm pretty sure. I mean, someone in the
Oh, sure.
comments can correct us a bit, but yeah, they're liberals at the very least, but I think maybe a bit more even. And yeah.
So, for example, I just to illustrate the point that they are a bit more conciliatory and less aggressive. Foreign Minister Lapid to meet Vice President Harris and State Secretary Blinken in first Washington visit to focus on Iran, Gulf alliances. You see, not just focusing on a statement by
Yeah.
a foreign minister. But Foreign Minister Lapid is also the head of the biggest party within the coalition, so he's not. He may be even actually more powerful than Naftali Bennett when it comes, because Naftali Bennett is quite right wing and hardcore, and so far Israel hasn't acted. I mean, it hasn't really shifted away from what it
Yeah.
was before, but it's at least it has rhetorically has reduced tensions relative to past. So yeah, I just found this to illustrate the point regarding their relative tonal shift towards other
Brilliant. Good
publication we
stuff.
discussed. And yeah, sorry, I'm just looking at my specific notes
Oh, and we're
regarding.
seeing an Israeli ad
Interestingly,
here. That's interesting.
sorry, we are meeting seeing
We're
it.
seeing an Israeli ad there. That was interesting.
Oh yeah, all right, yeah, pro. So what I found interesting was that there was no because recently there was a lot of stuff going on in Middle East with Lebanon and Iraq, and which we discussed in another segment. But there was not much about it in Israeli publications, and I found that to an extent surprising.
No, you're absolutely right.
Lebanon especially. So I didn't have time to do a deep dive on most of these. I focused on the main page. As goddamn, sorry, sorry.
But I
I've
think this
had
is
a lot
pretty
of
cool, just looking at the main page as well as the individual articles. I like that.
yeah, that was the point of these ones, I suppose,
Yeah.
that just instead of substance, focusing on the way they are setting the tone. All right, so now moving on to our second region or market, news outlet, however we want to, because this one was a bit, or country, because to be honest, I actually wanted our viewers to maybe guide us a bit in that respect as well. Like, I looked at China Daily, but I didn't know any other major news outlets from the region, to be honest, even from China itself, that is setting the tone in that country. So for pretty much, we're just looking at China right now, and China Daily, which is the state funded news media of the Chinese Communist Party. So it's officially backed by the Chinese government. It's a very not. It's, I must say, it's better at propaganda than Fox News. It's not as obvious as Fox News, but there is a general feeling whenever you're going through their page that their stories are about the positive aspects of Chinese development. And for example, you see top 10 Chinese CEOs, a lot of focus on climate change, a lot of focus on the recent COP15 United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. A lot of articles on that, a lot of articles on China's activities on that. So that was one of the major domestic issues covered. There was another major domestic issue was obviously the energy issue, which we said was a major issue in all regions we covered, to be honest, except the US North America region to an extent. So it was mostly a old world kind of problem. But it was interesting because there are all these conflicting reports about China and India's level of output and their capability and all that. But the China Daily was mostly positive and was focusing on the ways that it's been addressed. So clearly, very they have a nice. They look at things within China with a very nice glasses.
Yeah, no, you can 100% see that. Hold on for a second. Don't change anything. Oh, go back to the home page.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's so clear you're so right. I mean, a lot of them are kind of feel good stories, and yeah, a lot of climate change. And I just wanted to wait for a second, or sorry, environmental things. After this one, the one about the cars, it's funny. It's not self-driving cars, they're intelligent cars. Intelligent vehicles.
Well,
interesting.
Yeah, I never understood the difference between AI and automation. If somebody could explain that to me. But anyway,
I've never heard the term intelligent used in that way. That's interesting.
Oh, well, that could be sometimes China Daily and RT and that everything maybe mistranslation that also could be. So so domestically, just wanted to as I mentioned, the energy crisis, the what was it, the biodiversity COP15 summit, either convention. So
but how come
a lot
it's
of
called
news about
COP
that
as well? That's so weird.
COP as well as what? There is something else that's
COP,
called
yeah,
COP
the climate change, the climate change one is also called COP.
I don't know. I guess they ran out of,
Hold on.
acronyms. Naming rights. There are no. Can you copyright like your organization's acronym? Has that come under IP rights? Yeah, as of yet.
I don't know. Am I messing up something? Continue, please. And while I just,
I mean, it's technically called the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity.
yeah.
So,
Look, this is so weird. For instance, there's going to be COP 26. Oh, I'm showing you my phone. Sorry. There's going to be COP 26 in Glasgow, which is the climate change one. And this one, the acronyms are the same. But, well, if they don't get confused within them, imagine you're in the meeting, you're like talking to it's like, guys, I mean, I know that these
all the
issues are
I send the documents.
connected, but I thought we're here to talk about CO2 emissions. You're talking about fish, they're related, but yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
oh well, sorry about
if
that.
like many old-fashioned companies and institutions still use email to communicate, and like at COP, like
Yeah.
you make a tiny mistake and all the documents are sent to wrong. Like some anyway, but I don't know. Anyways, but yeah, that was so that was domestically. There wasn't much in terms of foreign. There was some criticisms of U.S. activities, obviously, and all that, but there wasn't much
Yeah, not
international,
much
as you
I
can
can
see.
see.
No, there is the UN, as you can see, call for injection of liquidity, and whatever it
Wow.
wasn't that much aggressive as some of their headlines. Sometimes, because there are days that it seems that like the government may have actually like intervened and told them
Man,
what to write or something.
there.
But what I did notice, sorry, just to mention, was there is a focus on India and the
Mhm.
military situation, the ceasefire, the ongoing ceasefire with India, and the elections are coming up in India. We'll discuss that when we focus on India, Pakistan, Hindustan region. But yeah, there was some stuff like it was quite interesting, because even the international aspect was not like, probably from international perspective you think they would be so US focused, but it was more about India, in fact, than regional smaller countries. I saw more stuff than US per se. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's very interesting. I mean, India is their rival as well. I mean, they even like had some.
I do
They
think,
even fought them a few times, like man to man, on the border
yeah,
last year. But yeah, that's interesting. On the homepage, there's nothing on about the U.S. And yeah, they're very
they,
inclusive.
they,
They
they,
even had Gutierrez, the UN chief, that not many outlets give a shit about, to be honest.
Al
Unlike Ban
Jazeera and
Ki-moon.
China Daily.
Yeah, Ban Ki-moon, they used to love him. He's a bit of a leftist, so they don't love him that much. I mean, a bit.
I would say generally, since Kofi Annan and the Afghanistan and Iraq war debacles and all that, generally speaking, UN heads have increasingly have lost their power and influence and prestige, and it's become an increasingly ceremonial role. So, and that's probably why they allowed Guterres, who's a bit of a lefty from Portugal, I think,
Yeah.
to become like, just yeah, man, do it. Because Kofi Annan was the last one that tried to assert some kind of authority, and just
Yeah.
US just told him to shut up, and that was that. But yeah, no, I would say, yeah, it's interesting, because I think a lot of people pointed out, and there may be some level of cultural prejudice in that Chinese people or Asian people have a longer view of history, and I don't think that's necessarily always true, but I do think that does, like, China might in a long term see itself as a big, like, India for China. Like, a lot of people don't understand the view that Indian population, majority of India, has towards Muslim or Turks, as imperialist powers. Uh, you know, so there are all these things that you can probably deduct or deduce by looking at their publication that is more, it comes out of a domestic production, rather than an international perspective.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
So I don't know. Yeah, anything else to add on China or China
No,
Daily?
no,
This was not
no.
really a region or marketplace. It was
But I love
like
their
one
COVID one. They
publication.
calculate their COVID in a different way, their cases, because they always have zero new local cases. I don't know. I
Oh,
don't
I
know.
didn't even look at that. Report zero. Do they? Is that allowed? I
I don't know.
thought
I always see
that.
it. I think
Oh,
as soon as they count someone, then the counter goes back to zero. They're like, okay, since a second ago, we haven't counted anybody new. Right?
I don't know about that. That sounds a bit too harsh on the. I mean, I'm sure there are I mean, all surveys have
No, I
problems,
mean,
but yeah,
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, no, I'm joking. Yeah. No, but I mean, there are their response to COVID. I mean, a lot of it we haven't heard about much of it. I mean, what they've done. I mean, you hear about it in the international press, and of course, if that's something you want to find out, there are ways to go find out. But yeah, I mean, I think they did
So
very serious
it's
lockdowns. I was listening to people who
yes,
work
yeah.
and
Oh
like,
wow.
and even still now with their testing and everything. I mean, you remember in the beginning of COVID, it was very serious to wait like 2 weeks until you knew for sure that you weren't infected. I feel like now it's kind of like a few days passes, it's okay. But in China, they still take that like they still I was listening to something and they take that 2 weeks very seriously. Like for workers, when they switch them around, you have to go home for 2 weeks and just one negative test is not enough and all that. Whereas, yeah, you hear that 2 week period a
That's
bit
great
less.
news.
At least that's my hunch. But yeah.
I mean, look, yeah. I mean, uh, uh, 2 weeks was for after I heard that after you're done with your symptoms, it takes like 2 weeks to like you shouldn't have symptoms for 2 weeks, and then potentially you're clean. But yeah, I mean, I mean,
Yeah,
I
no, I
hope
mean
I
just
hope every
reminding back
country
then.
take it seriously, and vaccinate as much as you can as quickly as you can. But anyway, so shall I close? So we're done with
Yeah.
this. Okay, so now moving on to another region which I find extremely fascinating, and this region actually has a lot of English language outlets. So it was both interesting and a lot of outlets to look at. I only selected a few, and I look forward if anybody has any suggestions or anything. But now we're looking at the Hindustan region, so India and Pakistan, basically, mostly. Yeah, obviously Bangladesh, Kashmir, and all that is part of it. But today it's just India and Pakistan, and in both countries, it was again I found it quite interestingly. Uh, uh, in India, I looked at the print. They have a great YouTube channel. That's how I got to know them with their, I believe, editor in chief, Shekhar Gupta, with great analysis, great debates. Actually, to be honest, I mostly consume their YouTube stuff. I hadn't looked at their website. Their website is far more domestically focused. As you can see, it's pretty much all domestic news.
Mm-hmm.
As I don't know if you can see, like even the international stuff is very much domestic related. A lot of the stuff about COVID, a lot of the stuff about energy. Let me see here, energy stuff. So very domestically focused and very much. Sorry, what was I going to say? Completely escaped my mind, but mostly domestic focus. The print seemed to me, compared to the another publication I looked at, which was Express, a slightly more sort of centrist or right-wingy. They had more. They seem to have a tougher stance on Pakistan and China. They had a couple of articles about the ceasefire with China and situation in Pakistan, which we will discuss. The situation. They were very much. It seemed their type of like they were. There is a political crisis right now going on in Pakistan. It's not doesn't seem to be much of a political crisis, but the way print was covering it was far more grandiose, in my view,
Mm.
than probably it merited. Although they had somebody who was arguing that on one of their debates, so that's fair enough. But especially they provide very good analysis, and they're probably because they're critics of the current government. So right now their articles are pretty good, especially I would imagine if you're domestically located. They have a lot of articles about the specific regions, the specific cities, the specific schemes by the government, because the Indian election is coming up, about the infighting among the Congress party, the major party that was in power for many years, Nehru's party. So yeah, very interesting outlet, but mostly domestically focused, with some articles focusing on China and Pakistan. For example, look at this. China believes its time has come, but here's what it hasn't come to terms with yet. Again, somewhat suspicious and cautious of Chinese increased power. And so and as we discussed in our previous videos, China and India have border issues with each other. So we'll see how the situation will. I mean, besides border issues, their rivalry may be the rivalry that will define the next century. So we'll see. Another news outlet was Indian Express. Sorry, it's just reloading there. Indian Express was a bit more left wing, and in my view, from their articles, and that's the feeling I got from very much the headlines and couple of articles. So again, I'm not making a major judgment right now. So first of all, I felt they were more domestically focused. They were the publication that, by the way, was part of the Pandora leaks as well. Like, they helped the consortium of journalists, or were part of that. I don't know exactly. A lot of articles about the energy issue in India, about the coal issue in India, far more than the print, which was far more focused on political parties and that type of thing.
That's interesting. Sorry, the whole coal thing is interesting, right? Because I mean, I think in the developed countries in the Western world, it's been phased out too much now to be brought back into discussion. But I'm guessing that in India and in China, anytime there's any issue with energy crisis, since coal is still relatively prominent, at least in China. I don't know about India. I don't know about India at all, actually.
It is.
So maybe it is. Okay, so it probably creeps back into the conversation very easily, or I'm just thinking out loud here, but it's interesting how both of them had stories on coal.
Sorry, just to clarify, what do you mean? Like, it's because it's been phased out? Because in the UK, for example, they very quickly discussion went to coal, but because
really?
they don't have they talked about, but the coal output, like there are only, I think there are 2 active coal mines. So the discussion went there, but the idea, first of all, that some countries don't have the mines anymore. Some countries want to do it because of environmental reasons. And but I believe in China, from what I understood from, again, the print does a good analysis as well. Shekhar Gupta, I forget, but it plays a big role in their energy.
So that's exactly what I thought. So I 100% agree with that. The only thing I was missing is that, I hadn't heard too much of the talks. Maybe in the British stuff I didn't hear, but I'm thinking of DW and the EU and all this. Didn't hear too much talk about coal, which makes sense, as you just said. I mean, they've kind of phased out coal. So
I don't like Germany would be interesting, because I remember at least 15 years ago or something, they still were quite major German coal mines, and I know they used even liquid coal, which is apparently not a very bad, like it's comparable to gas or something. So sorry, it's a bit of tangents there, as our usual style, but but in general, Indian Express was a bit more, I would say, even more locally focused. But I found it quite interesting that for India, that is so they have such a major English language outlets and so many writers and so many speakers of English. They are so domestically focused. Their websites were more domestically focused than US, which we have described, US media, which we have not described, noted that in our view were somewhat domestically focused. So that was, it was a bit eye-opening, let's say.
A global trend, I guess. Except Al Jazeera. But I mean, Al
I will.
Jazeera, they're not going to cover. I mean, there aren't that many
Yeah, they
Qatari
never.
stories to cover.
No, that's the thing. I would say actually, like, yeah, depends, because it shows India. I mean, freedom of expression and all that. Because RT, Al Jazeera, a lot of these, a lot of, yeah. Anyways, but anyway, yeah. Let's moving on to Pakistan. The issue that I wanted to, I couldn't find a Pakistani news outlet. So for Pakistani issues, I looked at Turkey and Indian news outlets, as well as just some British news outlets. But I wanted to cover these issues anyways. So I wanted to talk about them. That the major issue that was, I saw that on some of YouTube channels of Pakistani people, because Pakistani language is somewhat understandable to somebody who understands Persian. So I could see what was going on in a way, like from the headlines. But the Taliban and the relationship with Taliban, and how that type of thing dominated the domestic conversation, as well as the death of Abdul Qadir Khan, who was the father of the Pakistan's nuclear bomb, he's called, as well as the person who sold the nuclear technology to North Korea, Syria, and Iran, I believe. So he's considered a hero, and his death really affected the news. So Abdul Qadir Khan's death was everywhere, and there were mournings all across Pakistan. And there were a lot of interesting debates in both India and well, I don't know about Pakistani news outlets, but in India's news outlets, there were quite a couple of interesting things about him. But more probably importantly, Imran Khan and Pakistani military had a standoff. This was in Business Standard and was covered also in Indian. And this was the crisis I was referring to, that was covered in India far in a, like, from what I read in Business Standards and English news outlets, it didn't seem as big of a deal as it did when I read the print and other outlets. There is a there's this tradition apparently that basically Imran Khan has, let me just read this. Imran Khan and Pakistani military in a standoff over new ISI chief. ISI is the Pakistani military intelligence services, right? And ISI chief has increasingly become important, almost, but not equally as important as the military chief of Pakistan, as possibly this first, the most powerful person in the nation, or the second, depending on who the prime minister is and all that. So I mean, there are a lot of technical details about this story, but yeah, it was a story that dominated, and some people were saying even Imran Khan might this might be his days might be numbered and all that. But so it was getting a lot of coverage, but not a lot. So, and a lot of talks about in again Pakistan itself, a lot of talks about the fact that New Zealand and England pulled out of cricket tours of Pakistan because due to security issues and all that. So that was a big issue in India, in Pakistan itself, that dominated the news cycles.
Very interesting. Yeah.
So I don't know if you had any.
I didn't know any of this. I didn't know anything about all this.
Yeah.
I usually read news about Pakistan on. Go ahead. I was gonna make a stupid joke. Continue.
No. It's. I would say Al Jazeera and TRT, the Turkish channel, they seem to have some stuff about Pakistan. But if anybody can suggest Pakistani, although I didn't have time to do my own research, so I'll just do it. I don't know why I keep asking people to do my research. Sorry, I'll Google it myself.
But Al Jazeera,
but I didn't look at Pakistani English language news outlets. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, in Al Jazeera, whenever there's like, some kind of terrorism or something like that, they have one correspondent who covers it. I know that for sure. But beyond that, yeah.
Okay. You
Beyond
mean the
that,
same person? It's been there for many, many,
I
many
mean, there's
years.
one guy I just always recognize him, and yeah, he always
Oh,
covers
okay, yeah.
Pakistani politics, and I mean events in Pakistan, really, I should say.
Yeah, not just yeah, it could be a sports. There's sports gets a lot of coverage in obviously UK and all that. But yeah, but so I think that was the. I mean, hopefully we'll cover the smaller nation and we cover the other news athletes in the Hindustan region as well. But yeah, that was
Mhm.
what I gathered this week. Hopefully, I gather more next week.
Good stuff. Good stuff.